This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. We join you regularly with short business episodes, short private equity episodes, then interviews with brilliant business and private equity leaders, as well as different episodes on life and business advice and a lot more. We're joined today by one of our most listened to guests. We're joined today by Liz Hutson. And Liz is going to talk to us about sort of almost a Teddy Roosevelt concept of being in the ring and trying things and giving it your best, and where does it go from there? Liz, let me tee us up and ask you to first introduce yourself and then take us to the topic of the day. Again, Liz Hutson, founder of EGH.
Sounds good. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I'm Liz Hutson. I'm the founder, principal consultant of EGH LLC, and we are a healthcare products and services company, consulting firm that is highly focused on the private equity space. And topic of today is really, what's the point? We work really hard in life on all kinds of things, whether it be in work, on work projects, career aspirations, and the roles that we're trying to get after. It could be athletic endeavors, life goals, whatever that might be. But they don't always end up. They don't always play out the way we hoped they would. So sometimes we find ourselves in life after going for those goals and asking ourselves, what's the point in working so hard, chasing after those dreams when they don't always play out, especially when we're going after something really big and hard. And so we want to talk about, what that looks like. What's the point?
And so that's one of the great questions. For those that are strivers, why is it necessary to strive? I remember being a young kid in the classroom, and if somebody tried too hard, they would almost be criticized for it. It was almost this, almost like and I no offense to the union folks, like a union concept. If any of us work too hard, it messes up the union. But why strive? Why be strivers? What do you get out of it? Isn't it just a lot of stress or into your life when you could coast like a lot of the world?
That's right. That's right. I think when we think about big things that have happened in the world and the people that went through and persevered through those things, it's because of their perseverance. It's because of their willingness to keep going, to never give up. And even though so much of great ideas, new innovations don't play out, sometimes they do. And when they do, it's something profound. And you never know if a dream is going to have legs until you try. And so, what's the point in having those, great ideas and brilliant concepts if they only stay in your head? So I would say first thing about that, what's the point? Well, sometimes they do play out. So you've got to try. I love Wayne Gretzky's phrase where he says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think that's so true. So you have to try. But as I said, and here's where, we fall down and we kind of get stuck in that pity party. And sometimes it doesn't play out. And sometimes we fall short of that outline goal. So what then? What's the point? And to that, I would say, what was the actual point, right? So here's the thing. Though we have a stated target, that is the prize. So for example, it might be first place in the race, or it might be gold at the Olympics. In a career setting, it might be the vice president role, that title that you're going after. Could be, for me, this is something I just went after last week, is the world champion of public speaking. I just went through a whole 8-month-long process to get to the finals of that and spoke at that on Saturday. And you know what? Sometimes it doesn't happen. And it didn't happen because maybe someone was better. Maybe game day came and you didn't bring your A game, or maybe there was a rule or a technicality, which we just saw in some of the Olympics, right? So you want to throw in the towel, right? That's natural. That's so normal. You want to walk away from it. You're mad, you're sad, you feel deflated. But back to my question, what was the actual point? Because what happened along the way? We got better than we were before. We learned, we grew. And I would argue that the trajectory of growth that happens when you set forth a hard goal is exponentially higher than one that happens passively, right? I'll say that again, because I think that's been a big learning for me, especially in the last few days. The trajectory of growth that happens with a hard goal is exponentially higher than one that happens passively. And I think that's an important learning when we go for these hard things where, you know, it's been said, you shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. The point isn't necessarily the target. The point may be the journey. The point may be the inspiration for yourself and to others.
And there are actually great studies to go to the point of goal setting. And there's different studies on big, hairy, audacious goals versus incremental goals. I fall somewhere in between and close to the incremental goals. But there are great studies that people that set goals end up, you know, a huge amount ahead of the rest of the world that doesn't. So actively setting a target versus not at all, those that actively set targets end up, you know, there's a great Yale study in this, there's a great Harvard study on this, that they end up being far more successful than those that don't set goals and just sort of go along with the program. And so there's outward measures of success, but those could be measures of success too, that you set a goal to have a great family life or a great business or whatever it might be. And even if you don't hit whatever the exact target is, just by having set a goal, as long as it's not such a crazy stretch goal that you don't get discouraged, you're more likely to get much closer and to achieve and satisfied than not. I might set a goal to get to be a 5 handicap, and I might not get there, but at least by doing so and putting the work in, I'll get below into the single digits, which is something I might have thought I was never going to get to anyways. I mean, just a bunch of different goals on this. It could be an economic goal, it could be a business goal, it could be anything. And then what about the energy level, Liz? Because, you know, all of us go through different periods of life where we're very targeted, very focused. There's other periods of time we're not as targeted, not as focused. How do we get back after and find the energy to start going after things, to get that achievement orientation going again? How do we do that to not get into a perpetual cycle of sort of living off the fat of the land or coasting and so forth?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Scott. I think two things come to my mind on that. One is dreaming and envisioning what you want your ideal future state to be, and write that down. Make that something of like, this is what I want. This is who I aspire to be. This is the impact I want to leave in the world. This is how I want my kids to remember me, right? As soon as we start to articulate that ideal future state, the daily tactical things that we do come into context with something far bigger than ourselves. And I think that's one really big piece of motivation. The other thing that I would say is when I'll talk about my own journey over the last 8 months here in this process of competition, is I surrounded myself with a tribe of people that had my back in two ways. They encouraged me and they pushed me. They made me stronger, but they also were there when I fell down. So you got this. You can keep going, right? So they're both pushing and shoving me to go. I know what your goal is. I'm so for you. I want to encourage you in this, but they're also there when I'm feeling down. I want to quit and throw in the towel. They're also saying, no, you got this. You got to keep going. I feel inspired by you. I feel excited about what you're doing. This is your mission in life. You got to go do something with that.
At what point, Liz, you set this goal to compete in this public speaking competition? I mean, you're a great public speaker to begin with, but what made you decide to go out and compete in this, to decide to give this a shot? And what efforts did you put in over the last 8 months to prepare yourself to go after this and do this? And like a Nancy Kerrigan type thing, is there a judge that we should try and take the legs out of that caused you not to win? Is there someone, you know, I forget, Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan, is there someone that me and your husband should go after because of that judge behaving poorly?
Oh gosh. No, nothing like that. So what made me start in the first place was, you know, I started to talk to people, trusted people that were in my corner about what my goals were. That I want to make public speaking a much more serious part of my life. And so knowing that that was my goal and knowing that I had some abilities in this area, albeit, you know, budding, they said, you know, competition is a really great way for you to fast track your growth. And so I said to myself, I don't know that that's how I want to do this, but they know what they're talking about. So let's give this a try. So I started in the beginning of that, and I went through the process, and each step along the way. And I'll tell you, Scott, just yesterday, I went back and I read the speech that I wrote back in January, and how clunky and awkward it was back then. I thought it was brilliant way back then. And then when I see what it's evolved to, it's on draft number 55, I think. I've gone through 55 drafts of that speech. And to see the progress that it made was affirming of what they said. This is a fast track way for me to learn and to grow. So what did I come away with? I learned how to create and refine a really good speech. I met people around the world in this process. Scott, I visited, probably 100 different clubs around the world, virtually and some in person, and got to meet some amazing people along the way. And from giving those speeches, immediately opportunities opened up for me that I never thought were possible. So, wow, those are really great points of learning and of gratitude. And yes, some of the things that happen along the way in a judging process, take the Olympics, take kind of even anything that has some subjectivity to it, human factors into it. There are going to be some things that you put in your best level effort. I felt like I gave the speech of my life on Saturday night, and I felt great about it. And some of that is just left to humans, making those judgment calls, what they felt moved by, what they felt was excellence and what's not. So some of this is out of your control. And again, there was a part of me that wanted to just throw in the towel and say, I'm done. I like public speaking, I don't want to do this anymore. However, when I could get clear and be really honest with myself, wow, I did make a lot of progress. I did meet some amazing people. I did have some opportunities along the way. My goal of learning how to speak more profoundly with more impact, to share the story of my life with 2,000 people in person and thousands more around the world. And when that video becomes available, I get to share that again. That was my goal, and that goal was achieved. And so I feel really, really good about it.
The question I have, Liz, is what was the speech on? Tell us, just give us a preview of the speech, and how do we get you on the Becker's Healthcare or the Becker's Private Equity or Becker's Healthcare podcast to give the speech? I guess those are the two.
Oh, thank you. Well, there were two speeches. My semifinal speech was about perseverance. And Scott, I'm a martial artist. I talked about my journey to black belt, and it was entitled Get Back Up. And it was a really fun, lively speech that allowed me to really interact with the audience. There was a board break in the middle of it. I got to do some kicking and some yelling, and it was great fun. That first one was about perseverance. And so when I won semifinals and I advanced to finals, my second speech was about gratitude in a storm. And so in that speech, I talked about our house getting struck by physical lightning and the process to get back to life. And then I paralleled that with the story of our daughter being born 2 months premature and not knowing if she was going to make it to day life, and the metaphorical storm that we went through. But that in both those situations, we had the opportunity to find ourselves being grateful for our home, grateful for Yasmin's progress in life, and how fortunate we are that she can breathe, that she can cry, that she could live, and how much more we appreciated the simple things in life because of it.
That is just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful process. And we'll make a bid for you to give one of those two speeches on a Becker's Healthcare podcast. Right? How long are the speeches? How long are these talks?
It cannot be more than 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So 5 to 7 is the limit. If I go over 7:30, I get disqualified.
Wow, that's when you get Nancy Kerrigan. No fair. Okay, so here is what we're gonna do is I'll have Chanel cut the audio at 7:30 just so it's a real test drive. One of our goals is going to be, if you're willing, is to give one of these award-winning speeches on the podcast on one of the next month or so, if you're willing. And
it would be my honor, Scott.
If you're scared to, Liz, you don't have to. If you're scared to, don't do it.
you just dared me, right?
Exactly. Well, we're looking forward to it again. We're joined today by Liz Hutson, one of the great ones of all time. Liz, thank you for joining us on the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. It's like the Gong Show. I'm going to get Chanel to get that gong, and this is way before, at least Chanel's time, and probably before your time. There used to be a gong show, a game show. When somebody went past a certain spot, they looked uninteresting. The guy would hit the gong, and then they would be off the show. Here we're going to have that 7 minutes and 30-second buzzer where Chanel just cuts us both off. Chanel, Liz, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much. Great to talk with you.